Hello, I'm Mantastic and Fantastic, and today I'm going to be reviewing the 11 million downloads Celebration Godfest, which is kicking off on Saturday. So, with any Godfest, the decision of whether or not to roll rests upon your individual monster box and your personal needs. So just because one thing may be beneficial to myself or your friend doesn't necessarily mean it's going to be helpful to you. So you have to use your own judgment, and this video and corresponding post will be used to help inform you of the various different cards you are able to roll. So, in the 11 million downloads Godfest, we actually have 5 times Godfest exclusives along with plus 33 to each stat being rolled out. However, I feel that these increased rates don't necessarily reflect higher chances of rolling, but simply help normalize against the inflation of the rare egg machine pool. Because back when we first started playing Pad, there was very little cards available to be rolled, so each card technically had a higher chance to be rolled. However, as more and more cards were introduced, it makes it harder and harder to roll that specific card, and thus by increasing the rates to 4 times and now 5 times for Godfest exclusives, it probably just keeps it abreast with what it was beforehand. So it may look nicer on paper, but the chances of you rolling that card may still be the same or even less potentially, just because the rare machine pool is so inflated. However, this is all speculation on my end. I could be wrong, and you just have to roll and just find out for yourself, to be honest. So as I mentioned, there is going to be the Gala of Flame along with 5 times Godfest exclusives. And on day 1, it features the Heroes Pantheon and Egyptian 2, whereas day 2 has the Norse and Sengoku or Samurai Pantheon. Now, there's also a wide array of Godfest exclusives featured. However, I just want to point out that day 1 has Kali, has Kaede, and has Kana, whereas the day 2 has none of those 3. And this is, again, my personal opinion, but endgame teams that are performing at the highest level currently require Dark Kalis, Kana for Raw Dragon, and then Kaedes for Ranove and Kaedes for themselves. So if you are aiming for Godfest exclusives, it's better to roll in day 1 because you just have a chance at hitting all the better Godfest exclusives that are currently available. Things may change in a couple of months, but presently speaking, those are what I would consider the strongest Godfest exclusives because they compromise basically the best teams currently available. So this Godfest could have been so much stronger if they had changed the lineup slightly, because the Heroes are one of the best Pantheons of the game, as well as the Samurai Pantheon. However, Egyptian 2 is one of the worst, and Norse are falling behind very quickly. So if they had Heroes and Sengoku together, you could have had one of the most amazing Godfest possible, because you basically are featuring all this, 2 of the best Pantheons. And if it was on day 1 of the Godfest exclusive, it could have been just like a dream come true. Unfortunately, they decided to segregate and split them up, so it's just not as desirable. But overall speaking, I would weight day 1 stronger than day 2, mostly because of the Godfest exclusive lineup, as the Pantheons are about similar level of prowess in the sense that Heroes Egyptian 2 are about the same as Norse Sengoku. Again, based on your box, if you have all the Heroes, it's obviously pointless to roll on them, but conversely, if you have all the Sengoku, it's not as valuable there. So just use what's based on your monster box and use your judgment. So I'm going to be going over reviewing all the cards individually, and as well as speaking about each Pantheon. So the Hero Pantheon is currently one of the strongest Pantheons available. They feature cards that have an ability to change orbs into their primary color and heart orbs, as well as enhancing those heart orbs, except for Pandora, who's special. But the point being is you are able to produce your primary attack damage as well as heart orbs. And this is crucial in endgame content because it allows you to heal up and deal damage at the same time. Furthermore, with the overarching prowess of the Heart Cross meta, these types of subs are some of the strongest you can acquire because it forms the 2 required orbs for activation. So they're not going to go out of style anytime soon. They've got an ultimate of an ultimate evolution, or awoken in Pandora's case. They have high weighted stats, they have great awakenings, and powerful active skills. So they're very well situated right now. Conversely, the Egyptian 2 is one of the worst Pantheons at the moment because they lack, I'm just going to have this here, but they lack any sort of awoken form or a stronger evolution, as well as not having any ideal home to fit them in. Because of that, they're a little lackluster, mostly because these cards, they don't fit anywhere in particular. You can have them and great, it's useful, but it's not necessary to success. You're not going to necessarily go out of your way to put them into a team. You may have better options. and it just makes them rather weak. But of all that being said, they still have plenty of room to grow because they have no reincarnated evolution and they don't even have an awoken evolution. So with an awoken evolution, a lot of this can change because all of these cards can gain a new active skill, which makes them more powerful, or a new leader skill, again, which makes them more powerful. So they have lots of room for growth, and if you have them, I'd still hold on to them because they have the potential to become very powerful. We don't know what direction Gung-Ho will take those cards. So I'm going to go through each of those monsters individually, and then I'll summarize day 2 afterwards. So in day 1, you have Yamato, and Yamato has 3 skill boosts and 3 fire rows, so he's a very powerful card because he helps ensure all your actives come up on turn 1, whereas, as well as providing a lot of passive burst damage. And generally speaking, he's best suited on your Krishna teams because Krishna wants to optimize Rose damage for maximum efficiency, and Yamato does that. However, if you're fortunate enough to pull the various the rare collab rolls, Christmas Gremory and Yamamoto are amazing leaders for Yamato to be used on because, again, he provides the ideal orb change, rose, and skill boosts. In addition, Yamato has wonderful combo synergy with Leyland and Verdandi if you choose to inherit her, because that will actually allow you to produce a 2/3 fireboard and 1/3 of something else. But the 2/3 fireboard will basically allow you to have 2 rows and possibly 3 if you get lucky with the distribution. So that's a way to deal lethal burst damage on any team, and it greatly lowers the need or dependency on bringing a damage-enhancing active. Finally, all the hero gods actually have this Recover Bind Awakening, which allows them to clear 3 turns of binds with a row of hearts. So because all of their active skills generate heart orbs, you can form the row of hearts, clear 3 turns of binds, and be on your merry little way. This is obviously most powerful in co-op because you can have your partner absorb the binds, and then when it comes to your turn, you can just clear the binds with ease. Andromeda follows a very similar pattern to Yamato, except she has 2 skill bind resists and 2 prong instead of all those skill boosts. Now, whether or not this is going to be helpful to you depends on your team and if you're playing in solo mode. Because if you're playing in solo mode, the 2 skill lock resists can be helpful, but in co-op, it's kind of less viable because you probably have your partner providing some resistance, and it's just not as helpful there. However, Andromeda still remains one of the strongest water subs in the game, and she's used on essentially every single water team available because of her god and physical typing. She can be used on Neptune Dragon, Blue Sonya, the Ionai Ryune, which is kind of outdated, Sarasvati, and Lakshmi. So she has basically every strong water team will want to use her because she has a great active, great awakenings, and high weighted stats. And she also acts as that soft bind clearer. So an amazing card to have, but her one downside is she has not the best combo synergy because you need to ideally have a Summer Erd or you inherit a regular Erd somewhere to combo with. Otherwise, she doesn't really have a good 2/3 board change combo synergy. You can obviously inherit Haku, but natural synergy is very low by comparison. Perseus is again very similar to all the other hero gods, except he has 2 skill bind resists, and this is actually very important because 2 skill bind resists is crucial on Awoken Liu Bei teams, because Awoken Liu Bei does not have any skill bind resists on himself or the Zeus Dioses, so their teams are somewhat vulnerable to mechanics and they can basically fall victim to skill binds, and Perseus helps mitigate that risk by providing 40% resistance by himself. And his Row Awakenings are strong, but it's not maybe going to be the most helpful in a lot of cases nowadays because Wood Row teams are kind of out of the meta. And he can still, of course, be used on the TPA teams such as Kaede, Ranave, and Parvati, but he may just simply be better used as an inheritance assistant for those teams in order to take better advantage of more ideal awakenings. Next is Sun Wukong, and again follows the exact same pattern of an amazing active that has great synergy in Heart Cross teams, and most notably Miru, who is a farmable leader and is considered one of the best cards in the game. So Wukong, again, is very powerful, and he does provide that soft bind clearing, which can be crucial to success, because you will not actually have to be as reliant on other subs in order to clear binds, so you can save yourself a sub slot or an active slot. And finally we come to Pandora, who is the only unusual one of the group because she has an Awoken form, which actually has decent modest leadership potential, as well as the regular evolution form. So the Awoken Pandora is a much stronger leader, has haste now instead of just the regular orb change, and she does have much more stats skewed towards health. However, the Dark Pandora retains the God typing, has much greater recovery, 2-time extends, and the prong. However, in most cases, the Woken Pandora will be the better choice because haste generally is more powerful of an active to have than a 1-turn less cooldown of heart enhancing. Of course, based on your situation, you may choose to use Dark Pandora, but both Pandoras, regardless, have the Recover Bind Awakening. They have great synergy of Zuo to form that 2/3 board, a dark board for burst damage, and both are great subs on Gremory teams because Gremory is a Heart Cross Dark leader. However, Pandora is somewhat outclassed by Akachi in most cases because Akachi has better awakenings and a much stronger active skill. Next is Egyptian 2, and like I said before, Egyptian 2 is somewhat lackluster, and we start off with Set. And Set was quite an exciting card upon his release with his new evolution because the triple TPA was allowing him to hit very high burst damage. However, even though he does have God typing, so he can be used on Shiva Dragon and reincarnated Shiva teams, the need for damage enhance, especially one as low as his, is kind of at an all-time low. Because Set only provides 50% damage enhance for 2 turns, and that's not that much. You have basically any other enhance is a stronger option than Set. And yes, he has triple TPA, but reincarnated Shiva teams tend to hit quite hard, and they usually have enough damage for most content, and you'd probably bring a stronger enhancer in most scenarios. Conversely, Shiva Dragon's kind of outdated, it's just for fast farming. Most people don't even need the set anymore for clearing easy content. So, like I said, the 50% damage enhance is quite weak, but it does allow you to save at least some actives potentially, because you can use set on the second to last floor, have 50% bonus damage, and turn your hearts into fire. From there, you can obviously kill the floor, and on the next floor, you use your other orb changers, and you still have the damage enhance carrying over. So it has some potential, but he's just in an awkward place, and hopefully a new evolution gives him a bit more power and potential. Nut is actually quite a powerful card, in my opinion, still, despite the fact that she is kind of old. She does have 4 orb enhances and 2 TPAs, so it may seem unusual to think she can be used on a row-based team. However, she does have a lot of strong points. Most notably, she has a 4-turn base cooldown, and Nut is actually able to form... basically, she can be used as a base for skill inheritance because she has a low base cooldown, and you can basically inherit any active of your choice onto Nut, and from there, you can bring new utility that you may not necessarily be able to have access to because it might take too long to charge up. Because of 4 turns, it's very easy to recharge her, as well as get the new active skill. Furthermore, after you use that new active skill, you can just quickly use Nut's base active if you need an extra 5 water orbs. So the 5 water orbs is reasonably powerful. It makes an easy TPA match. However, you can use it to correct bad board changes by adding a few more water orbs or using in conjunction with other orb changers because you basically are able to form additional water orbs in a fixed scenario. You can obviously override poisons and jammers, so you have lots of opportunities and niche potentials for using Nut. Now, one thing to keep in mind is Nut does not actually have a skill bind resist awakening, and she can put your team at a little bit of risk. I realize my window is not very big, so I just realized I need to change this here to better accommodate this. Excuse me. I realize it might be a little hard to read here, so let's make this. There, that should make life a little easier for reading if you're following along there. So, next is Osiris. And Osiris again follows a similar pattern to Nut. However, Osiris is kind of outclassed by Vishnu because Vishnu, relatively speaking, is a better option. He has skill bind resist, he has better stats, he has better awakenings, more 2 prongs, just a better card overall. So Osiris is outclassed by Vishnu in my opinion, and because of that, he's going to have less viability than Nut as terms of a base for skill inheritance because Vishnu simply does it better. However, if you don't have Vishnu, you can still use Osiris in a similar way you would use Nut. Just be aware he does not have any skill bind resist. Next is Hathor, and Hathor basically has fallen victim to power creep because when she was released, it was way too late for this type of rainbow leader. She only provides 20.25 times attack and modest health and recovery, so it would have been good a couple of years ago, but it's just no longer viable nowadays. Like Raw Dragon by comparison is 2.25 times health, recovery, and 144 times attack. So he's hitting like 6 times harder than Hathor, and he's more durable. So what's the point of using Hathor at that point when you have something so outrageously outclassing her? So Hathor for now will either be a box cheerleader or a niche inherit for a gravity, because gravities are still somewhat rare to acquire, and gravities are helpful for bypassing resolve bosses. And being able to inherit a 25% gravity can allow you to push certain bosses or encounters below their resolve threshold, and that will allow you to actually execute them without having to deal with any of these funny mechanics. Granted, the other options like Sakuya are generally a little stronger because they have a bind clear component, but again, if you don't have any other options, Hathor makes a strong candidate. Maybe with a new evolution and an awoken form, she might regain a lot of relevancy and might become popular again. And last is Nephi, and Nephi again follows a similar idea to Set in that she provides 2 turns of dark enhancement, but she also changes darks to enhanced dark. Now, this is actually kind of worse in my opinion because you can use Nephi's active, but it doesn't solve your board. Like, Set at least produce fire orbs to combo with, whereas Nephi does not. So it's just kind of awkward. Like, you just made enhanced orbs, but if you don't use an orb changer, you don't really get the benefit. Furthermore, because it's 2 turns and you want to try and use an active, you want to basically use it on the second to last floor to have more, to have the burst for both floors, it's a little awkward because most of the damage enhancement comes in the first turn because you are enhancing those orbs. So even though she provides 2 turns of damage enhancement, you may only be using one of them because you may have to actually save her for the final boss to get the actual enhancement. Now, she's pretty much outclassed by Loki in most of those cases because of that or other damage enhancing options. However, a lot of teams may still want to use her, especially Yomi Dragon, who may not, if you don't have access to Akachi, and you use, say, Haku plus whatever, like Haku plus a Satsuki inherited somewhere. You get the same 2/3 dark board, but you don't have the orb enhances, so you might use Nephi to correct that. But the point being is, it's just an awkward card. It just doesn't do anything that great, so pretty much everything does her job better. And it's just unfortunate because she's cute, and she's not really used well. So, looking at day 2, we have the Norse Pantheon and the Sengokus. So, the Norse gods were once the go-to option for damage enhance. It was basically the strongest cards you had available at the time for providing additional damage. And they have fallen very heavily to power creep because they now have to compete with the Armor Knight series, who provide 2.5 times enhance for 2 turns for respective typings, or Sengoku, or the Gemstone Princesses, who provide far more damage enhanced for 2 turns. And it's just awkward because Norse doesn't really do anything good like, they're not the best at whatever they do anymore. They're just kind of the second or third best option. So it's just a little awkward, and the only bright side is they're relatively common to roll, and they do provide at least damage enhance for 2 colors, so you can use them in off colors. So for instance, Ionai enhances water and dark, so you can use it as a dark enhance inherit or a water inherit. But the point being is, they are just a little lacking right now, and a lot of the high-end teams don't necessarily need to run these damage enhancing anymore because you have access to higher multiplier leaders or active skills that already provide some sort of enhancement with a secondary effect that is more beneficial. Next is the Sengoku Pantheon, and they still remain one of the strongest cards in the game. This is because they have some of the most powerful actives available, because they actually provide 2 or maybe even 3 different components at the same time. Because of that, they're able to condense the number of subs you need to bring because they can address multiple different scenarios with one active skill. So that is huge because you can inherit them on various teams or even use them as subs now because they have their own evolution. And what I mean by this is, like, for instance, Sonata and Akachi, the fire and dark one, they produce their primary color, hearts, and then enhance their primary color orbs. So you don't need to run a damage enhance because you already have the damage enhanced component built in along with an orb changer. So they just do so many things at the same time. And this is partially why Norse gods are not as needed, because dark and fire teams have this beautiful orb change potential right there. So as I mentioned earlier, the Godfest exclusive lineup for day 2 is a bit more lackluster, mostly because it doesn't feature Kaede, Kana, or Dark Kali, who are basically the strongest Godfest exclusives at this present time. So again, if you do roll in day 2, just be aware you won't be hitting any of the more desirable Godfest exclusives. So I'm just going to go through each card again individually, and a lot of them follow a similar pattern. So Freyr has, well, actually, one thing I forgot to mention is all the Norse gods actually have 2 Skillbind Resist Awakenings, and that is great for solo play mode, but that prowess has kind of been diminished through co-op, as well as most cards now featuring a Skillbind Resist, so it's not as critical to success. So Freyr is the fire enhancing option, and it doesn't really need to be used anymore because if you have cards like Sonata, you'd rather just put Sonata on your team because he does provide the orb change and damage enhance all at the same time. So the need for Freyr is lower. Granted, you could still use him as a sub, but his 2 rows and 2 prongs kind of have conflicting messages because most teams don't need to rely on both types of orb matching, so it's just a little awkward because 2 of those offensive awakenings just go to waste, and it's just a shame because it's just not much use for Freyr at this point in time. However, if you're really eager to use him as a card, you can use him potentially as a leader, paired with Rao, who is coming back soon. I haven't looked at the collab if buff got introduced, but presently speaking, this is the current multiplier. It's only 14.625 times, but it's okay. It can get you by through easy game content at least, and it's just an okay option. But overall, I think it's a little lackluster of a card right now, but you can use them as an inherit on fire or water teams. I follows a very similar pattern to Freyr in that she wastes 2 offensive awakenings with 2 prongs and 2 rows, so it's just an awkward thing again, but at least water does not have a Sonata or Akachi equivalent, so you do actually have the potential to use her more efficiently because you don't have that dual purpose active built in. So you can of course use her, and the only team that may actually be able to use those rows and TPAs is Reincarnate Lakshmi because those teams tend to use a bit of both. They use TPAs to mow down the easier floors and then rows to kill the harder floors, so has some value there. But unfortunately, as a leader, she has kind of fallen out of favor, mostly because Ionai Ryune is just too weak by today's standards. It doesn't provide enough damage and has way less offensive potential. Freyja is again probably actually a stronger candidate than the fire and water equivalent, mostly because she at least has 3 rows, so she's a bit more focused on where her damage goes, and she actually has somewhat of a good home on Awoken Liu Bei teams. As mentioned earlier with Perseus, who has 2 Skillbind Resist Awakenings, Liu Bei teams need Skillbind Resist in certain dungeons, and Freyja provides 40% coverage on her own. So this greatly alleviates team building constraints and can help you also add a little bit of extra damage if the boss has tremendous amounts of health. Next is Thor, and again, Thor is a lot more focused in his awakenings. At least he's all row-based, so nothing goes to waste. And he does still form a reasonable team with Saria. It's a bit more popular than maybe Ionai Ryune, mostly because it's easier to come by Saria Thor friends, as well as the fact that Light is a bit stronger than Water by comparison. However, Thor does have a lower dependency nowadays, mostly because there is a thing called Wedding Akachi, who does basically provide Light orb enhancement and orb changing potential, so less need to run Thor in all scenarios. And finally we come to Loki, and Loki does at least have devil typing, so you might use him on, say, the Gremory, Awoken Pandora, and Awoken Lucifer teams, but Gremory teams do not need a damage enhance, and Pandora and Lucifer teams are kind of falling off the meta at the moment, so it's just not used as much. So Loki is mainly just probably going to be an inheritance option, and it can enhance light and dark teams. However, I want to point out that most rainbow teams are actually light-based, so it's not a terrible option to use Loki as either a sub on those rainbow teams for color coverage or to enhance their damage, because if all of them are light-based, at least he's enhancing those cards as well. Next is Sengoku Pantheon, and as I mentioned before, they're one of the strongest Pantheons available because they have a multi-purpose active skill that provides tremendous amounts of utility and viability because they combine several components into a single active. And this is great because it lowers the dependency on bringing other subs, it condenses your team building, and it's just great to have overall. Furthermore, with these evolutions that they've received in the past couple of months, they have great value as subs because they actually have powerful stats and awakenings to complement their active skill. So Sonata actually now has 5 fire rows and slightly higher weighted stats because of a Yama P buff that occurred very recently. And his ideal home is on Krishna teams because, again, you want to focus on fire rows, and this still actually applies to being used on Christmas Gremory and Yamamoto teams because you do have, again, a very powerful active skill. However, what I want to point out is that Sonata has beautiful synergy with Erd, because Erd will produce a 2/3 Erd plus Sonata produces a 2/3 enhanced fire, 1/3 heartboard, and that should be enough to basically kill any boss in the game. Like, most things are going to simply fall over if you make, say, 2 to 3 fire rows with all of them being enhanced. My Krishna team is hitting for around maybe 14 million per card if I manage to get 3 Fire Rose off on an Erd Sonata board. So tremendous amounts of burst damage. You don't need to bring in Enhance if you have Sonata, especially if you have Erd, or at least an Inherit to combo with, like say you have Awoken Haku. You can combo with Awoken Haku, then Sonata. The idea is there are combo potentials, and it's a matter of just finding the right ones. I guess lastly is one thing to point out, maybe not as popular now, but Sonata does combo with Mori Montanari to produce a full board of Enhanced Fire. You may not use it all the time, but some button teams in co-op may find niche uses for that. So Mori Montanari used to be a lackluster water sub, mostly because he didn't have any awakenings and low stats. However, this current evolution is very powerful. He has 4 water rose and 2 skill boosts. So this actually greatly helps your other cards come up in time, as well as providing lots of passive damage along with one of the more powerful active skills in the game. Mori Montanari is able to provide 2 turns of haste and a full board of fire and water orbs. So this is great because you can use it on basically any mono water team that does not utilize hard orbs. So Sarasvati, Neptune Dragon, Blue Sonya, Awoken Ionai Ryunes do like this, as well as even Awoken Hermes, even if you are taking a bit of a gamble because you cannot correct the board. Furthermore, the 2 turns of haste is great because it allows you to recycle various active skills back up again and allows you to maybe use an active for a second or third time when you may not have been able to otherwise. Mitsunari is very similar to Mori Montanari in the sense that he has 2 turns of haste, except he provides wood, dark, and heart orbs. And this addition to heart orbs is very powerful because it allows them to be used on various heart cross teams for either dark or wood. Because if you use it on a dark team like Grimory, you have the synergy with Pandora, and that's huge because you create basically a 2/3 board of dark, 1/3 heart. So you can make your optimal board for Rose and Heart Cross, as well as 2 turns of haste to recycle actives. However, if we're focusing on Mitsunari as a sub, he does have some uses on Liu Bei teams, but other than that, there's not much use for a Wood Row card because Wood Rows are not popular. And on Liu Bei teams, it does have some use, as you could use Mitsunari then Liu Bei for a very budget Zeus Dios active. It's better to have a Zeus Dios in most cases. However, you may want the haste for some certain reason, or you may need to overcome combo shields because tricolor board changers can have value. But if you want to try and overcome combo shields, you want to use something like Green Sonya or Avalon Drake. But the point being is at least Mitsunari has some value on Liu Bei teams. Next is Keiji, and Keiji is just in an awkward place. His active skill provides all orbs are randomized completely and they fall down, as well as 1 turn of haste. Now, it's technically a board refresh, however, it doesn't guarantee you at least 3 orbs of each element, so you're taking a certain degree of risk when using this style of active skill. However, you can use it to remove locked orbs, and that removal of locked orbs is key because, presently speaking, only 3 cards in North America can remove locked orbs, and this is huge in the sense that you can reshuffle your whole board and then use whatever orb changer you need afterwards. So this had a lot of relevancy on the 297 Zeus, but it may have relevancy again in the future because we got to get rid of these locked orbs. Now, again, it's risky to use him as the standalone board refresh, and I would caution you of using him as if you're relying on him for a new board. And last, and certainly not least, is Akechi. And Akechi is considered, again, one of the strongest dark cards in the game, mostly because his active skill is like Sonata. He produces enhanced dark orbs and heart orbs. So this is huge because it combos with both Zuo and Haku to form those enhanced 2/3 dark orbs. And basically, you are able to deal spectacular burst damage with this type of board. Furthermore, he has value on like Grimory teams, and of course Lucifer Pandora, as well as Yomi Dragon. And if you are choosing to use him on Yomi Dragon teams because of the new evolution in the next couple of months, you want to make sure he's in the Dark Light form because Dark Light has orb enhances. And the Dark Light form is actually quite good because if your team has too many rows and no orb enhances, it helps at least diversify your damaging awakenings. So, in conclusion, the 11 million downloads Godfest is reasonably exciting. We do at least have 2 strong Pantheons. It's just a shame that they're split up from each other and they're paired with 2 lackluster Pantheons. From a Godfest exclusive point of view, Day 1 tends to be stronger because, again, you have the Dark Kali, Kana, and Kaede, which are basically the strongest Godfest exclusives presently speaking. So, let me know what you think of this video. You can obviously find this article in the description down below, but let me know if you plan to roll and how many rolls you've wagered. So, Hopefully, I've at least enlightened you as to what this Godfest has in store. I hope you have a fantastic day, and happy puzzling!